I worked 2 jobs and skipped vacations for 3 years to pay for my own wedding. I kept the guest list small, the menu simple, and chose a backyard over a ballroom, so we wouldn't go into debt. My sister spent the whole engagement calling it cute the way people say cheap. She showed up to my wedding wearing floor-length white sequins as a joke. Halfway through the reception, she grabbed the microphone, called my husband a safe, boring choice, and said I was pathetic for settling for this little life. She made my mother cry, my in-laws furious, and the room so awkward the DJ cut the music. I watched my own sister laugh as she burned down the one day I'd built so carefully. She thought I wouldn't do anything because I'd always been the quiet one. She also thought my husband was just a regular guy in IT with an old Honda and a cheap ring. She had no idea who he really was, or how quietly stepping back would cost her everything she thought she deserved. My name is Claire. I was 29 when I got married in my parents' backyard in a suburb outside Seattle. It was early September, the kind of day Pinterest pretends is normal: soft sun, crisp air, a breeze that didn't knock over the centerpieces my best friend and I had made by hand. My husband, Ben, and I had been together for years. We met at the public library downtown, me at a community college advising table, him in the computer section, trying to fix a printer for an older couple who'd given up. He was wearing a faded band t-shirt and sneakers that had seen better days. He asked if I wanted the chair next to the outlet. I said only if he promised not to mansplain Wi-Fi to me. We ended up talking for 2 hours. At the time, I was working as a medical assistant and finishing prereqs for nursing school. He said he worked with software, which I filed away as code for sits at a desk and knows things I don't. He was funny, kind, and the first man I dated who asked as many questions as he answered. It wasn't until months later, after I'd already fallen for him, that I realized works with software meant owns a software company. A small one, yes, but one he'd built and quietly sold to a larger firm before I met him. He'd stayed on as a senior engineer because he liked the work and hated networking. I figured if I kept it vague, he admitted when I finally dragged it out of him, I'd know for sure who liked me for me and who liked me for the stock options. So, what do you have then? I'd asked, half teasing, half terrified. Enough, he said simply. For us to choose, instead of panic. That's all I care about. I'd grown up without much choosing. My sister Lauren and I were raised by a single mom who juggled 2 jobs and 3 credit cards. Lauren, 3 years older, decided early that she wasn't going to live like that. She focused on image, on escape, on making sure everyone knew she wasn't one of those people, even if our address said otherwise. By 25, she'd moved to Los Angeles, branded herself as a lifestyle influencer, and started dating a rotating cast of men whose Instagram profiles looked like luxury catalogs. She loved words like elevated and aspirational. She loved the idea of being the first in our family to break out. She did not love that her quiet, community college grad little sister ended up with a man who, on paper, outran most of her boyfriends. The thing is, she didn't know that part. Ben and I chose to live below our means. We rented a modest apartment. He drove an old Honda because he hated wasting money on impressing strangers in traffic. The engagement ring was simple on purpose. I told him I didn't want a rock that made patients wonder if I was in medicine for the wrong reasons. He respected that. Lauren did not. When we announced our engagement over FaceTime, her first reaction wasn't congratulations. It was, oh, that's small. I laughed it off.
It's what I wanted, I said.
We're saving for a down payment instead of a diamond. You do you, she said, in the tone of someone tolerating a bad haircut. My ring will be an investment piece. She came home once between brand deals, swept into our apartment in a whirlwind of designer luggage and complaints about airline snacks. She looked Ben up and down, plain t-shirt, jeans, bare wrist. So, what do you do again? She asked, popping gum. Software engineer, he said. Back-end stuff. Like coding? She wrinkled her nose. Sounds dull. But at least it's stable. Claire needs someone stable. She's not built for risk. She said it in front of me, like I wasn't there. Ben smiled politely. Stability is underrated, he said. pays the bills. She turned to me later in the kitchen, leaning against the counter as I packed leftovers for her to take on the road. You could have done better, she said, out of nowhere. Better than what? I asked. Better than this. She waved a hand. At the apartment, at the ring, at the life I'd chosen. You're pretty. You're nice. You could have aimed higher. Higher than someone who loves me and treats me well? I said. What does higher look like, exactly? Money, she said bluntly. Status. Options. I'm not saying he's bad. He's just safe. Pathetic, kind of. Very small life vibes. The word pathetic hit like a slap. I didn't show it. Not everyone wants to be a brand, I replied. Some of us just want to not have panic attacks when the rent's due. She rolled her eyes. You've always thought too small, Claire, she said. You're meant for more than this. You just don't see it. I knew, then, that there was no point telling her Ben had quietly paid off my last high-interest student loan without fanfare, or that he'd set up a separate savings account in my name, just in case you ever want to quit and write that book you keep talking about. She'd only see the lack of visible luxury. So we stopped trying to impress each other. Lauren went back to LA, posting about grind culture and chasing dreams, and I kept building a life that felt sustainable, not spectacular. When it came time to plan the wedding, I knew what I wanted. Small, personal, not for Instagram. I grew up in my parents' house, a 2-story craftsman with a sloping backyard that backed up to a greenbelt. I'd always pictured fairy lights strung between the trees, my dad grilling, my mom actually sitting for once. We can afford more, Ben said gently when I floated the idea. We don't have to do the bargain version if you don't want to. I don't want to start our marriage with a bill for people we don't even talk to, I said. Backyard, tacos, thrifted plates. You in a suit that still lets you breathe. That's my dream. It's your day, he said. I'm just happy to be there. Lauren was less thrilled. Backyard weddings are fine, she said on a group call. For vow renewals. Or second marriages. Your first should be special. It'll be special because of the people, I said. People plus location, she countered. You only do this once, Claire. Don't you want it to be elevated? Elevated. There it was. I want our future to be elevated, I said. Not our table linens. She made a face.
Fine.
But don't expect me to fly home early to help hang fairy lights, she said. I have a brand deal that week. I'll land the night before. I didn't. I expected her to show up, stand where she was supposed to stand as my only sibling, and not make it about her. The joke, of course, was on me. The day of the wedding, the backyard looked like a dream. My friends had shown up at dawn to help. Ben's coworkers grilled carne asada. My dad cried when he saw me in my dress, a simple lace thing I'd found on sale, and altered with my neighbor's help. Lauren arrived 20 minutes before the ceremony in a white, sequined gown that clung to her like it had been spray-painted on. It's cream, she said when my mother's eyes went wide. Totally different from your dress, Claire. Relax. My followers will die for this. My friends exchanged glances. I swallowed my annoyance. It was one detail. I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't going to let her outfit rent space in my head on a day that was supposed to be about promises. The ceremony itself went off without a hitch. Ben's vows made everyone sob. Mine made his stoic father wipe his eyes. We kissed under the maple tree I'd climbed as a child, and for a brief moment, everything felt exactly right. Then came the reception. Halfway through, after the tacos and before the cake, my dad tapped his glass to make a toast. Then Ben's best friend told an embarrassing college story. Then, unprompted, Lauren grabbed the microphone. I just want to say a few words, she trilled, teetering in stilettos on the grass. My stomach tightened. Ben squeezed my hand under the table. She's your sister, he whispered. Give her a chance. I forced a smile. Lauren beamed at the crowd, one hand on her hip, the other waving the mic around like a prop. First of all, can we talk about how adorable this whole thing is, she said. Like a Pinterest board come to life. Polite laughter. And Claire, she continued, looking at me with an expression I recognized from childhood, the one she wore when she was about to joke an insult into the room. You look so sweet.
So, you.
Simple.
Classic.
My followers are going to eat this up. I felt my smile strain. I have to admit, she went on, when my little sister told me she was having her wedding in Mom and Dad's backyard, I was like, girl, aim higher. But then I remembered, she's always been like this. Pathetic in the most endearing way. A ripple of discomfort moved through the guests. Always choosing the safe option, she added. The sensible shirt, the boring car, the guy who works in IT instead of, being an actual CEO. There it was. The word. Pathetic. My mom's face had gone pale. Ben's jaw was tight. But you know what? Lauren said brightly. That's Claire.
Stable.
Predictable. Nothing flashy. And hey, someone has to do that, right? We can't all be out there taking risks. A few people laughed weakly. Others stared at their plates. Anyway, she concluded, clearly pleased with herself, here's to my sweet little sister and her small but mighty life. May you always find joy in the bare minimum. She raised her glass. The DJ, perhaps mercifully, started the music before the silence could swallow the tent. I sat there, cheeks burning, heart pounding, wondering how many of those words would lodge in people's memories when they thought of our wedding.
Ben leaned in.
I'm so sorry, he murmured. She's way out of line. It's fine, I said automatically. But it wasn't. Not because of the dress. Not even because of the speech. Because in that moment, surrounded by the people I loved most, I realized something that would eventually become my quiet revenge. Lauren truly believed she was punching down. She had no idea that the man she'd just dismissed as the guy who works in IT was, in his low-key, non-Instagrammable way, the reason her next big break was already hanging by a thread. Ben didn't make a scene that night. Neither did I. After Lauren's speech, a few people tried to smooth things over. My aunt clapped too loudly, Ben's coworker shouted, to Claire and Ben, and the DJ cranked up an ABBA song like volume could cover humiliation. I danced with my dad. I hugged my mom when she cried in the kitchen, muttering how she'd talk to Lauren later. I smiled in the photos. But something in me had gone very, very still. On the drive to the little inn we'd booked for the night, I stared out the window while Ben drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I'll talk to her, he said eventually. Tomorrow. What she said was disgusting. I know, I said. I just don't want to give her the satisfaction of thinking she ruined the whole day. You mean she didn't? He asked quietly. I let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. She lit it on fire, I said. But we're the ones who decide whether we live in the ashes. He glanced over at me, eyes soft. You're not pathetic, he said. You're the bravest person I know. I know, I said. Hearing myself say, it surprised both of us. The next morning we had brunch in my parents' kitchen, close family, leftover tacos, my bouquet jammed into a pitcher because we'd forgotten a vase. Lauren breezed in late, sunglasses on, coffee in hand. Ugh, my head, she groaned. Open bar was a mistake. My mom shot me a look that said, go on, I dare you. My dad just focused on his eggs. Lauren flopped into a chair across from me. Morning, Mrs. Boring, she said, smirking. How's married life? Ben set his fork down carefully. Lauren, he said. You owe Claire an apology. She blinked. For what? For calling her pathetic, he said. For insulting me. For hijacking her speech time to make yourself feel superior. Oh my God. You guys are still on that, she rolled her eyes. It was a joke. Lighten up. People loved it. People cringed, I said calmly. Mom cried. Derek's face looked like he wanted to disappear. That's not love, Lore. That's secondhand embarrassment. She scoffed. You're just sensitive, she said. I'm sorry you don't know how to take a joke. But, honestly, she leaned back, crossing her arms. Someone had to say it. You could have had so much more than this. She flicked her gaze around my parents' modest kitchen like it was evidence. More than a man who treats me well, respects my choices, and doesn't care how things look on Instagram? I asked. Hard pass. She snorted. Keep telling yourself that, she said. Anyway, I have a brand call in an hour. I can't get dragged into small-town drama. Then don't drag us, Ben said quietly. She pushed back her chair. Congratulations again, she said, voice sugary. Really? I hope you have a nice little honeymoon doing whatever you planned. As soon as the door closed behind her, my mom let out a breath. She's impossible, she muttered. I don't know where I went wrong. My dad shook his head. She's drowning in her own reflection, he said. We can't save her from that. Ben looked at me. Do you want me to do anything? He asked. Post something? Call her out. I thought about it. About typing a long caption. About confronting her in front of her followers. The idea made me tired.
No, I said.
I'm done performing for her. She can keep her stage. He nodded slowly. You're sure? He asked. Very, I said. Besides, she has no idea who she just insulted. He frowned, confused for a second. Then something like understanding crossed his face. Claire, he began. I know you don't like mixing work and family, I said. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just no longer going to protect her from the consequences of who she is. He studied me. That's scarier than anything I could do, he said, a corner of his mouth lifting. We left for our mini-moon that afternoon, a cabin by a lake, just us and bad Wi-Fi. For 3 days, we didn't talk about Lauren. We hiked, cooked, read. Ben finally told me more about his work, really told me, not the vague I code things version he gave most people. He reminded me of what I'd already known but rarely thought about, that the startup he'd sold wasn't some college project. It was the backbone of a platform that quietly ran behind hundreds of direct-to-consumer brands' influencer campaigns. We built the analytics engine, he said, poking at a log in the fire. The part that tells brands, this person gets you clicks, this person gets you headaches. When they bought us, they kept our team. I'm still the one who signs off on a lot of algorithm updates. My name's not on the press releases, but my decisions are under the hood. Like a ghost in the machine, I said. He shrugged. More like the guy in the boiler room, he replied. Not glamorous, but if I flip the wrong switch, a lot of fancy people's parties go dark. I thought about Lauren's last visit. The way she'd bragged at dinner about landing a long-term brand partnership with a skincare company, thanks to this new platform that finally recognizes real influence, not just fake followers. What's it called again? I'd asked. Glowsphere, she'd said, eyes shining. It's the future. They're so picky. They only choose creators with elevated brands. It's basically a stamp of approval, you know? I'd glanced at Ben. He'd raised an eyebrow, hiding a smirk. Now, by the lake, I connected the dots. Glowsphere runs on your engine, I said slowly.
Partially, he said.
They plug into our API. Their marketing people do the human side. We provide the data. We don't choose who gets deals. But we do control a lot of the performance metrics that determine whether those deals get renewed. And Lauren, I began, is one of their mid-tier creators, yeah, he said. High engagement, questionable conversion. Also, according to the latest brand feedback, a nightmare to work with. He said it casually, but my brain seized on it. Brands give feedback, I said. Like, she's rude, she's late, she insults their customers at events. Something like that, he said. Why? I stared at the fire. Because she just used my wedding as an opportunity to punch down, I said. And she's been bragging about Glowsphere making her career. I don't want to cost her rent money, but I also don't feel obligated to keep pretending she's this aspirational angel she sells online. Ben poked the log again. Claire, he said carefully, I can't just flip a switch and blacklist her. That's not how it works. And even if I could, I wouldn't feel great about it. I don't want to turn into some shadowy puppet master because our families are messy. I'm not asking you to, I said quickly. I know your ethics. It's one of the reasons I married you. I'm just thinking about boundaries. About no longer bending over backwards to protect her image when she keeps trampling mine. He relaxed slightly. Good, he said. Because, honestly, the best punishment for someone like Lauren is reality. We went back to the cabin's silence. When we returned to normal life, reality came faster than either of us expected. A week after the wedding, I was back at the clinic. Ben was back in his home office, headphones on, in a maze of monitors and Slack pings. One evening, as I was chopping vegetables for dinner, I heard his office door open. "Hey, babe," he called. "Got a sec?" I wiped my hands and walked in. He sat at his desk, face unreadable, an email open on the screen. "It's work," he said. "Related, adjacent." He turned the monitor toward me. It was a forwarded thread from a Glowsphere account manager. Subject: Creator Feedback, Lauren Reed. My sister's name. The brand, a mid-range athleisure company Lauren had posted about constantly, had sent Glowsphere a politely blistering email. Complaints about her behavior at a launch event. How she told a small group of customers that only sad people wear leggings to weddings. How she'd refused to take photos in the lower-priced items because my brand is above that. How she'd mocked a staffer's thrifted shoes on a hot mic, not realizing someone was recording. Attached was a short video clip. Lauren, in a borrowed designer outfit, laughing with a glass of champagne in hand. "Like my sister's wedding," she was saying. "Backyard, tacos, basic everything. Cute, but so small." I kept waiting for the real party to start. My words from the night echoed. "It's not about our table linens." Ben watched my face. "They're asking," he said slowly, "whether they should renew her contract. They want data and human judgment." "And you?" I asked. "I have to answer honestly," he said. "I can't bias an algorithm because she's your sister. But I also can't, in good conscience, say she's a great brand partner when this is how she talks about customers." "Do they know she's my sister?" I asked. "No," he said. "But HR does. Our conflict of interest policy is strict. I've already flagged that I'm recusing myself from any final decisions about her. My team will handle it." A part of me was relieved. Another part, the one still sitting in that reception tent, cheeks burning, watched the video again. No one mentioned my name. They didn't have to. "This isn't about revenge," Ben said softly. "But it is data." I took a breath. "I don't want you to protect her," I said. "That's the line for me. She can live in the world she's built for herself. I'm just done cushioning her landings." He nodded. "Then that's what we'll do," he said. "Or, more accurately, what we won't do." Within a month, Lauren's tone online shifted. The athleisure brand disappeared from her feed. So did 3 smaller partnerships she'd highlighted in a "so grateful" post just a month before. In their place were more generic day in my life videos, more hashtag add less outfit shots, more rants about the algorithm being unfair to authentic creators. On a late-night doom scroll, I saw a now-deleted story she'd posted, a screenshot of an email from a major platform saying they were restructuring their creator tiers and no longer able to offer her a paid contract at this time. The caption had been bitter. "Apparently speaking your mind and having standards is off-brand now. Guess I should go get married in a backyard to be relatable." Face with rolling eyes. She took it down within an hour. But the message was clear. For the first time, the gap between her curated image and how companies saw her was closing. Not because we'd sabotaged her. Because she'd finally run into a space where image couldn't override behavior. I didn't gloat. Not out loud. Inside, though, something that had been knotted for years started to loosen. She'd called me pathetic for choosing a small, stable life. Now, the small, stable choices I'd made, the steady job, the modest house, the low-key husband who quietly had more influence than he ever advertised, were the reason I could watch her flail without being dragged under too. The turning point, I realized, wasn't in a boardroom or a brand email. It was in my own living room, months later, when my mother called in tears and asked me to talk some sense into your sister.
"About what?"
I asked, already suspecting. "She's saying she might have to move home for a while," Mom sniffled. "The brand deals dried up. Rent's high. She says the universe is punishing her for being honest." I pictured Lauren in her LA loft, lit by ring lights, blaming haters when companies finally started reading her reviews.
"She's scared," Mom said.
"She won't admit it, but she is. You're her sister. You could help." Old Claire would have rushed in then. Sent money. Offered our guest room. Given her a pep talk about rebranding. Claire traced the edge of one of my thrifted coasters and chose a different path. I'm sorry she's struggling, I said. But I'm not in a position to fix that.
You have a house, Mom said.
A husband with a good job. You're comfortable. I'm comfortable because I built a life on being considerate and responsible, I said. Because I didn't torch other people's joy for content. That comfort isn't a communal resource. There was a long pause. She's your sister, Mom repeated, as if that word explained everything. And I'm your daughter, I said. But you didn't show up at my door to check on me after she called me pathetic in front of everyone I love. You came to tell me to forgive her.
I did, Mom.
But forgiveness and access are different things. Mom sighed. I don't understand you, she said softly. You don't have to, I replied. You just have to respect my boundary. I hung up and walked into the kitchen, where Ben was loading the dishwasher. How's the family guilt tour? He asked gently. Delayed, I said. Indefinitely. He smiled.
Good, he said.
You don't owe anyone admission. For the first time, I believed it. 6 months later, Lauren came home for Christmas. Not flew in first class and Instagrammed the airport home. Dragged 2 overstuffed suitcases up my parents' front steps in sweatpants and a coat that wasn't designer. Home. I knew before I saw her. My mom had called a week earlier, voice tight. Your sister's moving back for a bit, she'd said. Just until she lands on her feet.
Feet, I echoed.
Or someone else's shoulders? That's not fair. Neither was her speech, I replied. But here we are. On Christmas Eve, we all ended up in the same house for the first time since the wedding. The backyard, where I'd said my vows, was strung with the same fairy lights. There were more gray hairs on my dad's head, more laugh lines around my mom's eyes, and a dullness in Lauren's I'd never seen before. She looked normal. No glam squad, no ring light glow. Just my sister at the kitchen counter, stirring something half-heartedly while scrolling on her phone. Ben and I walked in together, carrying a pie.
Hey, I said.
She looked up, lips pressing into a thin line. Hey, she answered. Mrs. Cozy. It was an old reflex, the jab. It landed softer than it used to. Need any help? Ben asked, setting the pie down. I think I can handle green beans, she said. Thanks, IT guy. Dad frowned.
Lauren, he said.
Enough. She shrugged, unbothered. Old habits die hard. Dinner was awkward. Mom kept trying to steer conversation to neutral topics. Dad told the same jokes he always did. Ben did his best small talk with my uncle, who still thought anyone who didn't work with their hands for a living wasn't really working. Lauren picked at her food, occasionally chiming in with passive-aggressive comments. When the subject of work finally came up, it was Mom who asked. So, honey, she said too brightly, how are things in LA? New job going okay? Lauren sighed dramatically, pushing her plate away. I don't work in LA anymore, she said. None of my elevated partnerships wanted to renew. Apparently, being honest and having standards makes you difficult. Brands want robots now. Or people who don't insult their customers, Dad muttered into his mashed potatoes. She glared at him. I'm regrouping, she said. Rebranding. It's an opportunity, really. How's that going? Ben asked polite. She flipped her hair. I've got some lines out, she said. But it's hard when the platforms keep tweaking their algorithms. One day you're a priority creator, the next you're invisible. It's rigged. Ben made a non-committal sound. You work with that stuff, right? She said suddenly, eyes narrowing at him. Those platform things. I work on data infrastructure, he said carefully. She waved a hand. Same thing, she said. You guys are the reason people like me can't catch a break. You make the rules without understanding creativity. It's pathetic. The word hung in the air again. I watched Ben's jaw tighten, then relax. Actually, he said, we build tools. People make their own reputations using them. She snorted. Spoken like someone who's never had to put themselves out there, she said. You're just a cog. Claire doesn't mind, obviously. She likes safe. I set my fork down. Lauren, I said quietly. Enough. She rolled her eyes. Oh my God, Are we seriously still on this? She said. You won. You got married. I lost everything. Isn't that revenge enough? This was never about revenge, I said. It was about respect. You called me pathetic in front of everyone I love. You mocked my husband, my choices, my work. Now you're home because the world doesn't treat you the way your followers did. That's not my fault. Silence. Dad cleared his throat. Claire's right, he said. You're not here because your sister wished it. You're here because life finally said no, and you didn't know how to hear it. Lauren's face flushed. You all love her now because she did the right thing, she snapped. Kept her head down, married a boring guy, got a boring job. You never wanted me to be big. You wanted us to be your audience, I said softly. Not your family. Her mouth opened. Closed. For the first time, I saw her flinch not from a jab, but from the truth. Ben reached for my hand under the table. I squeezed back. Dessert came and went in tense waves. Eventually, my parents retreated to the living room with my aunt and uncle. Lauren escaped to the back porch with her phone. I found Ben in the hallway, phone buzzing in his hand. Work? I asked. Kind of, he said. They just announced my promotion. VP of Product for the Analytics Division. I blinked. That's huge, I said. He shrugged, smiling. Big title, he said. Same work. More meetings. Before I could kiss him properly, Lauren's voice floated in from the porch. I don't know what happened, she was saying to someone on speaker. They said my conversion wasn't high enough. Like, I can't control who buys. And then they pulled my contract. Twice. They keep saying our internal metrics don't support renewing me, whatever that means. I stepped closer to the sliding door, listening. They mentioned some stupid engine thing, she went on. Said their new VP of Product is tightening standards. I'm like, tell him to come live in the real world. Ben winced. She's talking about you, isn't she? I whispered. About my title, at least, he said. Not about me, specifically. We don't single people out by name. But yeah, our team did raise the bar on performance. Across the board. And she never knew, I said. He looked at me. Do you want her to? He asked. I thought about it. There was a part of me, petty, human, that wanted to see her face when she realized the pathetic IT guy she mocked had more direct impact on her dwindling career than any brand's social media in turn. But there was a bigger part of me that had finally learned something important. I didn't need her recognition to validate my choices. Whether she knew who my husband really was, or how much power he quietly wielded, didn't change the life we were building. Not from us, I said finally. If she finds out, she finds out. But I'm not handing her that storyline. He nodded. As you wish, he said, stealing a line from The Princess Bride because he knows me too well. We went back to the kitchen, washed dishes, acted like a normal couple whose biggest secret was how much pie we'd eaten before serving it. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I went out to the porch to get some air. Lauren was sitting there alone, knees pulled to her chest, her phone dark beside her. She didn't look up when the door slid open. You win, she said into the darkness. Win what? I asked. Life, she said bitterly. You got the husband, the house, the respectable job. I got almosts and X deals. It's not a competition, I said. To you, she replied. You never cared about being big. I did. Still do. And now it's like every door I knock on, they already know I'm difficult. Or they act like my numbers aren't good enough. Like there's some invisible club I wasn't invited to. Maybe it's not invisible, I said gently. Maybe it's made of all the people you stepped on to get where you were. She hugged her knees tighter. I was wrong at your wedding, she said, so quietly I almost missed it. About you. About him. About everything. I waited. You're not pathetic, she said. You're strong. In a way I don't know how to be. And he's not who I thought either. I saw the promotion announcement. People at the agency were freaking out. Saying your husband is the guy behind the curtain now. The one who decides who gets seen. She laughed, humorless. I spent years chasing approval from algorithms your husband probably helped build, she said. And I mocked him as small. I leaned against the railing, looking out at the dark yard. He didn't build them alone, I said. And he doesn't decide by himself. He just tries to make them fair where he can. He could have buried me, she said, if he wanted. He recused himself, I said. He told them you were my sister, and he couldn't be objective. She looked at me sharply. You knew, she asked. I knew he was in that world, I said. I didn't know the details until you started blaming the rig system for consequences you earned. She flinched. I thought you'd use it, she admitted. If you ever had that kind of a lever over me, I thought you'd make me pay. The way I made you feel at the wedding. I did make you pay, I said. Just not the way you think. She frowned. How? She asked. I stopped cushioning your falls, I said. I stopped defending you to Mom. I stopped pretending your behavior was just being honest instead of being cruel. I let the world see you the way you are, without me smoothing the edges. She was quiet for a long time. That's worse, she said finally. Somehow. Yes, I said. That's the point. She wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand. Do you hate me? She asked. I did, I said. For a while. Now, I just don't have room for you like I used to. That's not hate. That's self-respect. I miss you, she whispered. I miss the version of you that didn't need an audience to be kind, I said. If you ever find her again, maybe we can talk. She nodded, once, eyes shining. I'll try, she said. I stood up. Good night, Lauren, I said. Good night, Claire, she replied. I went inside and locked the door. She wasn't locked out of my life forever. That's not how healing works. But she no longer had automatic access. That was the line she'd never seen coming. Months later, back in my own house, making tea while Ben tapped away at his keyboard, I thought about how everything had shifted. Lauren still posted, still chased deals, still talked about manifesting. Sometimes she'd call my mom crying about metrics, about feeling invisible. Mom would ask me why I couldn't help her more now that Ben was some important tech guy. I'm not responsible for her reputation, I'd say. She is. Ben and I paid off our modest mortgage faster than any algorithm could track. We built a savings cushion big enough that when I finally decided to cut my clinic hours and go back to school for my nurse practitioner degree, we didn't panic. We had dinners with friends who didn't measure their worth in followers. We took quiet trips where the only photos we took were for us. People still occasionally called our life small. They had no idea how big it felt from the inside. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's not marry rich in secret or hope your quiet husband has secret power over your enemies. It's simpler and harder. Don't measure your value by someone else's camera angle. Don't let anyone, sibling, parent, partner, convince you that choosing steadiness over spectacle makes you pathetic. And when someone shows you they will use your softest moments as props for their own story, don't waste energy trying to rewrite theirs. Just step out of frame. Let them deal with the audience they've cultivated, without you running sound and lights. My sister ruined my wedding and called me pathetic. She didn't know who my husband really was. But more importantly, she didn't know who I really was. Now she does. And the life I have, the one she dismissed as small, is big enough to hold my dignity, my dreams, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I never have to shrink to fit into her idea of success again.